Hola, hola, and buenos dias, GnGs. My name is Trekkw2ks, and welcome to Week in Crypto, brought to you here on the Gentleman of Crypto Network. And if you don't know, the basic idea is I do a no price talk filter of crypto-related news that happens between a Friday and a Sunday, pop it out 08 on a Monday morning, and I give it my, quote, spin in context of at least how things come off to me. If you're here for price talk stuff, I'm sorry to disappoint. I don't do chart reviews, and I don't give price talk. Thank you to the folks who have been coming back. Thank you to the new folks who are finding my segment in particular. Thanks to the folks in general who are jumping in and subbing to the channel overall. Much appreciation to the lurkers and the stalkers and the people who are doing the scamming side of it, because either way, y'all make the numbers go up on the back end. So we appreciate y'all. Granted, hey, not your keys, not your cheese, and all of that fun stuff. But nonetheless, I do appreciate the folks who are taking the time to tap in. And if we're talking within the live stream, thanks for engaging with me. I do appreciate that. If you got any questions and other stuff like that, you can find me on Twitter. And as we say, like, we don't delete comments, but we do keep receipts. So if I say something and you don't agree with it, comments is always open. Remember that. And so let's jump into these stories, because I think I got a couple of things that count as indicators, while a couple of the other stories count as trends. And one or two of them, I'm like, I don't know what this means, but I think it's something. All right, so let's go. Jumping into this first story, I think I'm gonna say that this episode is like hacker themed. So like sideways, arguably, shout out to the hackers out there. Y'all on y'all grind, ain't no doubt about it. Folks is on their grind. All right, so I'm gonna run with the same format I kind of did in this last week episode, where I was just hitting headlines and not really reading actual body of articles, in part because it's a number of stories. And then I know I get too lost in like some of the reading in stuff, but that's how I'm gonna run with this one too. Again, I'm having more than 7 stories, and we already know how I am on tangents. So this first one here is hackers claim to have compromised bankrupt Bitcoin ATM firm CoinCloud. This came out over this came out over the weekend, Sunday in particular. I didn't see this in my arbitrage news platform that I use. I seen this over on the Twitter side. Shout outs to Woo Block, because they were the one who reported it, but they reported it off of them. So I didn't see this story anywhere else. So I don't know how the confirmation is going. Here's the thing to understand though, right? So they basically stole the biometric stuff, as far as they got people's selfies, they got emails. I believe, well, no, you don't have to worry about social security stuff with how the ATMs was working. But nonetheless, here's the thing. We can now positively identify what people look like with crypto wallets. Again, I said this a couple weeks ago. If you have been paying taxes on your crypto, whatever wallet you had that was outside of an exchange, you have sideways KYC'd yourself into the system. No one's letting you know that though. But if you've been paying taxes on your crypto outside of a crypto wallet, because the exchanges is already telling on you already. If you've been doing other things with your like cold storage, whatever, you sideways KYC yourself. The point of why I bring this story up in particular is I think this will be an indicator for some more stories that we will have pan out later on in this year, and how people are going to be like, I don't know how they knew who I was. And they'd be like, oh, like some story's going to pop off on some like, oh, that's the picture. Like she matches the picture. He matches the picture. The evidence is going to play out somewhere down the road. This is at least how I'm thinking of it, because I got a couple of other stories that relate to situations happening where people are basically being physically assaulted and told, yo, empty your wallet. And that's what's going on. So you can definitely read in on this one. I don't know if you actually use CoinCloud, but if you put in a picture at some point of a selfie, you might have a situation. You might want to readjust your way of operating in this crypto space. Okay, I'm just throwing that out there for y'all. Do remember, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a lawyer. This stuff is simply about being able to throw out some information and some stories and things that kind of scratch my brain, and hopefully something gets you to question what you're doing in the space if you're looking to get into the space, if you're not in the space. And so, yeah. Now, this next story, this is something that goes into the sanctions, as well as them trying to figure out how to deal with either insulating themselves from the Western sanctions and their citizens, as well as like how are they controlling the capital flight. Again, everybody's still on the capital flight thing. Don't let them fool you to be like, oh, well, they don't have a central bank that's connected to the other international bank and IBS. But nah, dog. Everyone in their own way is working on controlling the economic movements of their people. This to me, even though it's not 100% like front transparent, leads to some level of a dual part of insulation from foreign influence, as well as being able to have internal influence in their jurisdiction, right? that's part of what I see on this. I imagine I'm gonna hear some other stuff to come up later on down the road that relates to this. I just don't know what it is of yet, but I think this is going to play out into something else. Other thing to note is that there have been other companies that they have done this to, as far as finding them about not having local storage of their citizen users. Um, you can go through the article, you'll see what it says about who's also been on it. But I think that as far as the crypto side of things is concerned, it's more important or has a higher validity because it also relates to the whole thing of capital flight and capital flight controls. All right. So, all right, next story is which one was this? Hackers exploit new bypass security alert. So basically, if you're using an Ethereum wallet, this if it's Ethereum based, you got to worry about this. The basic idea is that there was a function that allowed you to do it where you could create an address, and then once you do another particular action, it would then create the smart contract. So this situation, as far as the bypass goes, and I'm not going to get lost in the technical, the short of this is, arguably to me, this falls in line with what Jimmy Sung says about how, like, no, that's not a hack. That's actually the function of the smart contract and how you'd be able to put in an input and then have an output. It's only a hack because they're utilizing the addresses and smart contracts in unintended ways of the actual designers, of the actual developers. That's the only reason that this, in my opinion, is labeled as a hack. But if you're going off of technically what is being done, but it doesn't mean that they not out here draining wallets and they doing like big numbers, like 6-figure, near 7-figure numbers out here. So the thing to note with this is, what I didn't like about this article is it doesn't give you a way to like secure yourself on this. The only other thing that I could actually think of is be more stringent on how you are looking at the transactions from a security perspective. Like, make sure you're actually looking at what the transaction is. Is this something you came up with? They noted that Uniswap has this vulnerability, and we all know Uniswap is being pushed as like the golden child of DeFi, even though all of those things are centralized DeFi platforms. They're not actually, the funky part is they're not actually talking about actual decentralized exchanges. This seems to be something that's going on within the CeFi DeFi centralized exchanges. They happen to mention Uniswap. If you're in that part of the space, being a degen, you might want to look into this thing because you have the potential to get got. And like I said, arguably to me, this doesn't sound like an actual hack as far as like you did something to quote trick the system. This sounds as though it was technically the contract is following what it's supposed to do, but they're using it in a different way than the intended design and purpose. And it also doesn't say that they came up with any security way to counter it. So that's the other thing to note about this. If you're over on that side, you might want to check into this. As I always do, links for this stuff is in the description. And then, you can follow up at your own leisure. I highly, highly encourage folks to do their own due diligence. I am always a big proponent of y'all doing your own due diligence, because maybe the way it makes sense to me, it ain't going to make sense to you that way. Or maybe I said something that kind of makes sense, but you want to look in even more on whatever the thing is because you might have some intention of doing something in the space. Just saying. Hopefully I help point you in the right direction. Hopefully. I don't know. Other thing to note, not even know, jumping into this next story. So nearly 50 jurisdictions partner to enable automatic info exchange between crypto trading firms and tax agencies. So here's the thing to note. Remember, I just told y'all the other day about the roadmap that the G20 voted on, that was put together by the IMF and the FSB, okay, which is really just a copy and paste version of the OFAC report from 2021, right? This was the thing that was a part of like, yo, you have to get the exchanges to be on board with you, and the way you do that is by pushing the taxes part of it, and the way you also do it is by pushing in the traditional banking side, because they're going to have to touch your local fiat at one point or another. So it all kind of comes together. What I think is really interesting about this list, they do get into like the idea of like, hey, basically whatever your local tax laws are, we'll have it that our exchange will share with your exchange, which then in turn shares with the IRS of whatever country that is, right? So you basically have it that you really can't go nowhere and not expect for the financial activities that you do to have some taxable obligation to it. Other thing to note, there's a story I covered a couple weeks ago about, I think it was Circle that did the thing, or was it with Binance? I don't remember which one right now. But the idea of there was a point that was made about like KYC mules and people who will actually go through the KYC process as the front person for other questionable activity, or people who are more, what's the word I'm looking for, more adverse to not practicing financial privacy, they would use people as like the front person for whatever it is they're trying to do. And so that's one of these things right here where when you look at the list of countries that's on it, so like you got Switzerland, which I thought was really interesting and weird at the same time, Singapore, France, Brazil, but like Panama is not on there, Hong Kong's not on there. What's another? Estonia is not on there. And if you know what's up with those particular countries and how their financial markets and things work, you get why I'm like, I think what's more interesting about this list of quote 50, and they don't even name all 50, is who's not on the list. That's the real thing to know. What countries are not on the list? Because another thing to note about being in that whole front situation of like the KYC mule stuff is that you can either, if you got the passport or you got, whatever proper paperwork you need, you can be the front person in a jurisdiction that either has low taxes or near zero taxes, assuming you're doing all of the proper paperwork in that jurisdiction. This isn't me telling y'all to go out there and do nothing illegal. This is just me saying, like, here's what the operational environment looks like. And these different countries are coming together to basically enforce this thing within the exchanges as well as their taxation departments or agencies, and to network this information together across borders pretty much. It's going to be interesting to see how this play out in the next coming years, as far as like what these agencies and governments think, as far as people having all of this newfound economic, what do they call it, capital gains, versus the like, nah, what's really going on is like y'all pump the markets and then you mess things up, and now you're trying to get it out of the poor people or like the other people. I got another story that actually connects to this one too. Let me jump onto that because I'm on this too long. All right, so next story here. This story goes, crypto taxation misses the mark. India loses 420 million in potential revenue due to 1% TDS, right? So here's the thing to note about this. The short of it is, what is the thing? What is the TDS is, what is it? Transaction tax deducted at, okay, so tax deducted at source. So basically, it's like, we'll get you at the exchange, right, where you're holding the crypto, where you made the gains, as far as how the system sees that your equivalent in the fiat went up in value. So that exchange, we're going to tax you right there. We're not even going to wait until it's our tax time. The thing that messed it up is they went for a whole number, and the whole number added up to so much, depending on how much people were holding or what they were doing, that a number of folks who basically had some nice gains was like, all right, bump this. I'm just going to move into an offshore outside of India jurisdiction exchange and have my stuff stay over there. Now, in my mind, and based on some of the other things that were experienced here in the States, as well as other Western jurisdictions, the whole thing of the Biden bucks and the Trump buck stuff. Now, I've heard other people explain, like the more notable or more smarter folks than me within the economic realms, that what folks in the general economy and the legislators aren't understanding is that what you saw during the C19 period, as far as like, oh, people have money in their bank account, look at how much the saving accounts are growing, look at how much people are spending, was not a normal market cycle. It was highly manipulated, and it was X amount because of what the government was doing, in particular here in the States, to push a financial value into the quote hands of the regular people. And so when these financial agencies and companies and departments or banking things have to go, well, hey, here's how much money our people have right now, the regulators and people who are looking at how to tax the money and how to get the cut quote for the government are like, oh, well, they got the money. Meanwhile, it's really just a robbing Peter to pay Paul, where you put money in one hand and then you turn it over to the other. And it's just like, it's a smoke and mirrors kind of thing. And I'm making this point because I think that India, in their own way, has gone through the same thing, in part because of what people think they understand about how crypto and money and the valuation works, of where you can quote tax the people and extract wealth out of the people who are in crypto. And then the part of like what was going on in the C19 period and the whip effect of how it plays out down the road. It looks one way when you're on the outside, not really being a part of it. Not to mention the amount of the amount of artificial inflation that can happen in the space And so you come up with regulations that don't take into account that stuff. And then what happens? For the people who are doing stuff, yeah, they're going to move if they have the ability to what? Practice capital flight. I've been like, I don't know how many other ways I can say this thing about capital flight. It's playing out in so many different arenas, but it is what it is. People are going to look to find ways to hoard their capital until they can exercise that money to gain things that are relevant to them, or find ways to what is it, store, use it as a store of value. So you get out of the actual currency or whatever financial instrument you have in the term of like monetary stuff, and then you move it into like physical hard asset stuff, right? Again, I'm not out here telling y'all to go do nothing illegal. I'm just saying, based on some of the other smarter people I pay attention to who really be studying this stuff, I've heard that there are ways that people move about in the financial worlds that way. And so I honestly think that we're going to go through the same issue in the States once we really start pushing the whole thing about taxing people on their crypto. And like we come up with some TDS thing where we're like, oh, well, we'll just get you at the exchange. Like once you make the gains, we just going to hit you at the exchange and have the exchange give us the money. Which is funny, because if you do it that way, then why the hell don't you do that with the regular W-2 money that we get from our jobs? Just take the money from, well, actually, yeah, that is actually that way. But it's a delayed process, I guess to say, or is that in the real-time process? I don't know, but arguably we're going to work into this direction as far as the exchanges are concerned, and this whole thing of taking the money at source. So expect to see some version of this happen over in the States. I imagine some of the other countries are going to go through their thing of this too. Case in point, Nigeria have been trying to push this tax thing down on their people for a hot minute too, and it's not been working out too well. It also makes me wonder how Hong Kong and Singapore are dealing with their stuff as far as like the taxes, and how amicable are their people out there to it. Anywho, next story. Bitcoin robbery gang strikes again in Sweden, middle-aged couple targeted. So here's some, I didn't know that they do this over in Sweden. So basically, again, if you have a crypto wallet on an exchange, which is not really your wallet, it's the exchange's wallet. This includes Venmo, PayPal, well, not Venmo because they're not on the crypto thing yet, but Cash App, this includes them too, y'all. Don't think it don't. So that's the exchange wallet, and then you have your wallet. So if you got a hard wallet, you got a Treasure, you got any one of the other wallet things, a hot wallet on your browser, on your phone, whatever. If you paid any kind of taxes on those things, you sideways KYC'd yourself. But here's what Sweden did in particular. Sweden goes, we'll make all of the information public. The initial idea behind this was to deter their government folks from doing illegal things financially. Lo and behold, what it now turned around in, well, arguably people were saying this from the beginning, this is basically going to be a honeypot. This is basically going to be something that, again, folks will hack and turn into an unintended, not resource, but use it to do in a different way than what the initial intention and the idea and the laws behind why this thing was created to begin with. And that's just what people did. And of course, at the end of the day, nothing beats somebody smacking you upside your head or putting a barrel in your face when it comes to any type of security. It doesn't matter, like home security, you got the bodyguard security, whatever it is. If they can lay their hands on you, nothing is going to beat that like in your face physical thing. Again, this is not me telling folks go out there and do anything illegal or bad. I'm just saying, I remember what the 2016-15 period was like, and the stories were way crazier, right? So basically, this couple, they got a home invasion. The folks basically made them, run the crypto wallets because why? They was there and they was physically threatening them, right? The other crazy part is this is in Sweden. I don't know what their gun numbers look like there, but and they also say something like they used a knife from their kitchen to threaten them, and it's just like, wait, what? So they didn't come in with anything? They just like pushed it on the door and then like ran them in the kitchen? I don't know. Condolences to the family for going through that situation, but I find it more interesting that we are moving so far right of this thing of having economic, not economic, but digital privacy or digital sovereignty, or the ability to be like, nah, I don't want to have this information public. I don't want to share X, Y, and Z. And I honestly think this counts as a resurging trend. Because again, if you was back here in the 2014 period, in the 2015 period, and you was paying attention, like it was stories of people getting like hardcore kidnapped, like some paid in full back in the day joint kidnapped. Like we running up in the house, we see you on the street, you getting picked up in a van, in a car, and then we taking you someplace. Like, so in my mind, I don't think this is the only country that's going to have this situation. I think other countries will have this situation. And the funky part is it will be turned around and be like, oh, well, we need more regulation and we need to get more in your financials and in your business in order to quote protect you. That's the funky part about this story and how I see it playing out, in that it's going to be spun of we need to do more things to put controls into your financial life in order to quote protect you. But at the end of the day, like I said, ain't nothing beating a fist in your face or a barrel in your face or a hand upside your head. Like in your face physical stuff. And I even covered a story that's like maybe a couple months back about the joint that was going on in London. It was in London in particular. I don't remember if it was London in particular, but it was in England, and it was dudes catching folks coming out of bars or like catching you in secluded areas, and they would just run through your phone. If they found a crypto wallet, they made you open it and they transferred stuff out. Same thing again. I'm in your face. What are you gonna do? The point being, y'all, is be careful, be safe. If you are in a country that has your information as publicly accessible as Sweden does by law, like you better start figuring out something, or you better start like harping on your public representatives, because I promise you, this isn't gonna go away. And at the end of the day, like scammers are gonna be scammers, hackers are gonna be hackers are gonna be hackers, brute force people are gonna be brute force people. Low tech this is one of those examples of low tech, like low tech winning at the end of the day. Oh, you got the 2FA? All right, that's cool. Like, we'll just go to the house. We'll wait you out. Low tech is going to win, and you ain't getting more low tech than a hand upside your head, a wrench in your face, or a barrel in your face. You ain't getting more low tech than that, y'all. So be safe out there, to say the least. All right. I'm harping on that too long. Jumping on this next joint. So this story happens. Binance impounds 94% of 12.5 million funds stolen from abducted execs. So basically, there's a client. The client's plural. They get lured to some event in another country or whatever, and someone over at Binance looking at the wallet activity noticed that the client moved X amount at a certain time, and it was like, hey, what's going on? Why are you guys moving so much? Oh, what are you talking about? We didn't move that. Are you sure? Because we're looking at the stuff right now, and yeah, y'all moved this amount. Like, what happened? Long story short is they coordinate with the people at the home office of the client to find out that, yeah, something did happen to their people. So they instantly put out the alert. And basically one of the things that happens when they freeze funds, what's happened is the alert goes out to the exchanges. Hey, this wallet has been put on this like no-go list. Don't do any activity for this wallet for this address. So if you try to go to an exchange that is a part of that community, it's like, oh, you have a banned address. All right, we can't do nothing with you, and we're gonna go tell, hey, they tried to come to us. The other part to note is when it's this much amount, like there's only but so many places you can go, right? Unless you're just gonna take stuff and then not do nothing with it. That's another funky thing to do, which is like what happened with Monero's community wallet, where they took the stuff and then they just didn't do nothing. Which I have a whole thought process behind that whole thing, but nonetheless, this situation, they bring up the point in the story about how it's USDT, right? And in my mind, I'm like, well, Tether has the ability to freeze funds and reverse transactions. So I'm wondering, did the company, when they found out what was going on with their execs, did they reach out to Tether and be like, yo, hey, we need you to do X, Y, and Z? I don't know. They don't explain any of that in the story. Considering that they do have the ability to do that with the stablecoin. Then the other thing comes into, well, did Binance reach out to them? And then they were like, nah, we're not going to do nothing. I don't know. There's no information about that in the story, but it does make me wonder, why didn't Tether do something? Or maybe Tether did something and was like, yo, we don't want to take the lead on this in the news headlines. Binance, you go do that. Why? Because on Binance's side, this works to show that, guess what? They work with authorities when it comes to illegal activities on their, or within their community, on their network. I don't know if that actually played out like that. I'm just saying it is kind of curious to me that Binance is the lead on this as the exchange, even though the stablecoin producer themselves have the ability to freeze and reverse and hold their stablecoin, no matter where it is within the bigger network. So I'm just kind of like, I wonder what's the backstory on that. Nonetheless, this happened. Binance out here trying to do, quote, community good, because, and they don't even mention who the client is. That's the other part of this. And part, I don't think they should, but then the other thing is just like, I wonder if it's an American client or is it an Asian client? And then like, how would this work over on our side as far as like how's the US law enforcement looking at y'all? Is this a good look? Does this get you cool points? I don't know. There's some things running around my head. Again, this also goes to the thing of like the pattern or the indicator of we're getting into a period where these type of crimes are going to be more common, in part because you have people who are flaunting what they have and how they got it, and then the other part is certain jurisdictions have set up um public record systems that anyone can go and just look and see and be like, oh, and again, I covered the story. Where's the one with the where's the one the ATM joint. Think about this too, right? If you ever noticed when X number of the hacks happen in relation to the crypto space, it's like the latter half of the year. We get into the next following year, excuse me, and then like all of a sudden there's an explosion of spam mail that happens because X amount of the time there's all like 9 times out of 10 there's always what is the thing called, an email in the hack, in the leak, right? And so the point of where I'm going with this is that we're seeing more crypto related quote leaks and hacks as far as information. Now you got this other situation with the coin cloud that, hey, here's pictures of the people. You have what they do in Sweden where they make it all public record of who has what. Like, put this in context of, in my mind, the only logical thing that will happen as we get further into the R&D. I need y'all to think about the economic situations of how things are going up, inflation and all that other stuff, depending on who you listen to. Some people are saying, no, we're already past the R word. We're in the D word. So, and when you put into account other things going on, like I was listening to something, I think earlier today, and they were making a point about how the percentage of the American population that was unemployed during the Great Depression was like some near double-digit number. And because and they made the point of like, it doesn't take much for an economy to mess up and quote slow down and then like totally drop. It's not what people think, like where if you have like 25 or 50% of the population quote not working, that's not what it takes. Anywho, I'm running off topic. Point is, again, this happened. Expect to see more stuff going on. Again, like I said, this episode seems to be about the hackers and scammers. Like, they on their grind. This story, it is not a financial crypto story. It is a financial story, but it's not a crypto story. But in my mind, it relates to the crypto side because we're talking about digital systems. We're talking about hacking. And one of the things I've noted over the last couple of months is that there have been more stories of systems getting disturbed through some form of hacking where no monetary gain or capital is taken. The system is just being jammed somehow, and the institutions or the startups or the companies or the person can't make heads or tails of how it was done. And then the other thing to note is where there are cases where some money or crypto will be taken, but then it just sits someplace. It's sitting in a wallet someplace, it's sitting in a bank account of some sort, and it's not doing anything. So it's just like, well, what's going on right now? Like, how does this work? So the other thing to note is that the institution itself is a branch of a bigger global financial institution that, I'm gonna say the name of it. It's called ICBC, which stands for Industrial and Commercial Bank of the C-State. C-State, please tell me y'all understand who I'm saying C-State is. Again, remember what I'm saying about, the algos and transcription stuff. But the C-State is ICBC, right? And basically, they got like 5 trillion plus in assets. Someone went in and messed with their systems to where they couldn't do nothing, to the point that they had to use USB sticks to conduct transactions in a quote digital manual sense of going from one system to the other system with a USB stick. Do you know how like, I don't even want to say backwards, but like the level of like how much you had to dig into somebody's system that they can't even be like, all right, let's just do a reset and then we'll come back to it. And then that'll clear it. Like, no. Anywho, I think that this situation, what do I want to say? It shows that there are financial institutions or persons that can be targeted, but it's not the point of let me take your money, let me pick your pockets. I think there's something way bigger going on in this scenario, as far as it could have been a, hey, we just wanted to let you know that we could touch you, or we could touch where your money sits. Again, there's been a number of cases where it's just like, oh, they didn't actually take nothing, or like it's just sitting there, it's not moving around, it's not being divided, it's not being converted. What's that about? I don't know, but I think that there are definitely some other things being played out behind the scenes. Jumping on to this next joint. So the bank of these guys, we talked about them earlier in a story before, to develop digital ruble payment system with UAE. Again, I've been saying this for more than a year. The R state, there we go. The R state has been crypto friendly and has been working on legislation to do things for a hot minute now. And the stuff that we have done to, as they say, weaponize financial instruments, or such things as sanctions, has turned around and really blown up in our face. Why? And when I say our face, I'm talking about those of us here in the States who are part of this thing called the United States of America, and the way that our government works. And these people that we quote didn't vote in, like we voted in some people, and then they put an office into the bureaucracy, agency, department part of people who we didn't vote for to do things that we don't necessarily agree with, in order to quote protect us, or that work within the interest of our quote country, right? It's a funky place to be right now. Here's the thing to note about this. Funny enough, I got a homeboy out in UAE right now. I should hit him up and be like, yo, you heard anything about this? But he's not even a crypto person, so he wouldn't even really care. But nonetheless, at the end of the day, this is going to happen one way or the other. Does it happen in the year of the timeline that they're talking about, as far as what Russia's saying, like how it work out? I don't know about that. I think the thing that comes to my mind more so is, how is the US going to try to counter this? Because for the longest time now, we've been on this like, oh yeah, our state's economy is going down and they're not going to be able to do this and this. And lo and behold, like I was talking to somebody the other day who's in Africa, and they're like, oh yeah, there's mad our state people over here. Like mad our state people. And there's a number of their our state produced products that are sold in these countries, and they jump around a number of the African nations, right? Same thing is another person I pay attention to. They were talking about the same thing with the C state, that the C state and the R state are back and forthing with domestic produced products. Other thing to note with the UAE, one of their largest partners in bilateral trade stuff is the R state. So like, they're not backing down as far as following through with this CBDC. And I've said this before, I've said this a number of times before. We're going to see a phase of where different nation states and other invested parties from the financial institution are going to come up with their own version of CBDCs. And excuse me, I don't know if it's going to be like on par with how like crypto blockchains projects were, like the whole token and coinomics things were during the 20, let's say 14, 15 to 17. But we are going to go through a phase of that where you're going to have all these different ones pop up. It's not going to be the crazy thousands like how it worked in crypto, because anybody could fork a blockchain, because the technology is open source pretty much. It's not going to be the same thing of that, but there's definitely going to be a phase of where everyone's going to get their joint standing up, popped up. And then the question is going to be, what is going to be the culling event to make it that we've basically followed back into, I don't know if to say like this is just like a human nature thing, and this is just like how we are, where we just do things in cycles. Like granted, the cycles may be like years, months, decades, centuries, but we do certain things that just always bring us back to the same damn point. And so, when I look at it now, I don't know, like some points it just kind of makes me disappointed, especially with how we have moved in the crypto space, as far as this technology is a freedom technology. But you know what? It's a double-sided coin in that you can use it for freedom, but you can also use it for track and tracing, capital flight control. Like it has that capability of both sides. I can't even cap on that to say it doesn't. But it is definitely kind of annoying to see how we're moving back towards the same traditional setups when it comes to this whole financial economic market or like the whole thing about capital and like money instruments and stuff. But anywho, point being is this thing is happening. Expect to hear, if not within next year, I'm gonna say in next year more than likely, the UAE and other um states, nation states or countries over there in the sandbox look to make more. You're going to hear more deals and partnerships of these types as far as the hey, we'll do blah 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 in your CBDC. I'm expecting to hear more of that stuff because they are throwing money over there. Money's being thrown around over there like crazy. So I'm expecting more of these things, these kind of deals to become public. All right, jumping on to this next joint. So Coinbase launches on-chain KYC verification to plus 1 million users. This is basically the whole thing going on with Base. As I've said a number of times, I haven't touched Coinbase in years, so I don't even know how the Base, website looks. None of it. Here's what I do know. As I covered the story before about the 50 plus, countries jumping together to share the tax info and the exchange activity of their users, this will 100% play into that. 100%. And so, like I said before, if you've paid any form of taxes on your non-exchange wallets or whatever crypto you had in those non-exchange wallets, you KYC yourself sideways. This other thing that's interesting about this, for the way the story is broken down in this article, is that there's a number of platforms who are coming up with their digital ID products. The question for this latter half of the decade is whose technology is going to be the dominant is going to host the dominant market share, or how do I say this? I'm looking at it one of two ways. It's the trend that more platforms are going to come up with their version of a digital ID that works not just within their local market, but that the real push is to get the global market, right? So the question is it about you having a white labeled software that you can push in any jurisdiction, or is it about you having a baseline technology that, or no, or have a baseline technology that can connect any of the platform's digital ID to say, yes, this person has been verified over on that side. So like if I travel from Canada to Australia, my digital ID that I have in the Canadian system is validated and verified through a cross-chain or it'll be a cross-chain protocol that would work in the Australian system. That's what I'm trying to say. I think that that's the next direction. So we're going to see more platforms pop up with their whole digital ID thing. It's going to be a race between either who, quote, gets the bigger dominant market, while other folks in the space will look to be like, nah, let's come up with a protocol that allows, like, just like what we do in the tokenomics or within the coin thing of like, oh, I can use Phantom over here and then I can cross it over into Polygon over there. It's the same thing within the digital ID thing, which then, in part makes more sense of a more practical use case for NFTs as far as like digital ID stuff goes, right? Because then it gets into the whole metadata stuff and image and blah, blah, blah. But the point being is, this is going to be interesting to watch how it develops out. Not because I'm a fan of Coinbase, but because I see that other platforms will come up with their version, and then the battle is going to be who gets the best support from the governments, and then in turn that market adoption, or who's going to work with the protocol that works as like the universal verification translator thing, the bridge between the different digital IDs. That's going to be the question right there. All right, last story, finally, right? Crypto.com joins the World Economic Forum. I honestly did not see this story repeat anyplace else between Friday to now. And so I don't know like what this will mean or how it will play out down the road. Does this count as a global flex for them? Maybe. Is it something that the folks who are like loyalists to centralized exchanges will be happy about? Probably. I don't know if this would count as a confirm, like I don't see it as a pattern outside of like, yeah, the World Economic Forum for the longest time definitely looks to get X number of the top tier folks within various markets and sectors. Crypto.com for the American market, yeah, X number of people in the space know their name, right? It doesn't hurt that their logo and stuff is on a stadium or two or building or two. But you got to remember, this wasn't even their original name. They rebranded like what was that, 3, 4, 5 years back into Crypto.com. I forgot the name that they were before this. So I don't know if to take this as a, oh, this is going to be a flex or a bump. I don't know to take it that way. Um, Somebody might have thought that this was a good thing for biz development because now they're networked in with the more a different echelon of the global players. Arguably, this might be a good thing in how they're looking to play into the traditional financial network and the setup. So yeah, it could be a good thing for that. I don't know. Um, we'll see how much longer they last as an exchange. How about that? I feel like I haven't heard no story about them in a minute. So do they make it past 2025? Time will tell. Time will tell. But other than that, I'm gonna leave it there. Close that one out. Now the last story. Yeah, I ran a little bit long, I know, but I'm still trying to push this under 50 minutes, and it's gonna work so far. Other thing to note, I do this other show called Metaverse the Other Side. Those episodes will be on the network at some point. I got to start getting back into upload and stuff. But the lives we do on Thursdays at 8 p.m. And we talk about a bunch of different stuff that's like metaverse related. Again, it's me and 3D. We geek out on that. And yeah, it's no price talk. Sorry, y'all. I'm not the price talk guy, but I'm not mad about that. Nonetheless, though, if you made it to this point, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thanks for engaging with me in the live chat. And yeah, so as I say, have a productive over busy day. If you can't have the P over B day, at least be in a safe place, in a safe space, and in good company. And for one human to the next, that is the best that I can wish you. Other than that, y'all, have a good one. One.